If you are sitting around and you are saying that the Nolan Wells situation does not require an investigation, we know everything about you we need to know. That's right. We're clearly seeing you for who you are. And what you are is a flaming racist. That's it. That's all. Because we still have questions that need to be answered. And the fact that you don't think that these questions need to be answered, what else could it be that makes you not want to answer the questions? It's because you're looking at who is being considered possibly involved. We don't know if they're involved at all. You got 400 people on an island. We got friends he came down with, but we don't know if those friends did anything to him. That's what the investigation should be leading us to understand. That's what we should find out. But if you're sitting and you're saying, if you're on social media and you're telling people or you're posting that this is a waste of time, that this is not something we need to get to the bottom of, then that's a clear indication of what kind of person you are. That shows us everything we need to know, fam. I saw a video clip. Basically, what it is an audio of the friends calling the Coast Guard. And if you listen to this clip and you try to pick out what is being said on this clip, and you come to the conclusion, like I did, that there's something there. Some of it is unclear, some of it is clear, but it sounded like the people on the boat were in a moment of panic because somebody had died. So let me put this together. We got audio clip on the Coast Guard, into the Coast Guard, from the kids on the boat, the young men on the boat, where they're panicking, they're asking for help. And it sounds like a very incriminating piece of content. And you mean to tell me you're not the least bit curious about if this audio is accurately or genuine, or if this has anything to do with Nolan Wells? You're not even curious. I understand why you're not. Because you're more concerned with the color of the possible perpetrators who may be covering their asses, and you're less concerned because of the color of the victim, of the deceased, Nolan Wells. You can't convince me of anything other than that. Because Nolan Wells does not have a track record in any way that should make you feel like you don't want to get to the bottom of this situation. What other case could it be? What other reason could you have for not wanting to find out what happened with this young man? I'd love for you to explain to me. So folks, I like to leave room for people to expose who they are, because me telling you who they are is never as effective as when they show you who they are themselves. So you let these people talk. We all knew Brandon Tatum was a garbage person. We all knew that. Fam, if there was an audio clip that came out that said, well, somebody talking about Charlie Kirk, and it sounded like they were talking about doing something to Charlie Kirk, and something, as we know, something did happen to Charlie Kirk, you don't think that Brandon Tatum would be right there trying to get to the bottom of it? Or do you think Brandon Tatum would say, let the investigation do its thing. We don't need to have these conversations? No, he would definitely be jumping up and down talking about this tape. See, what this does is expose them. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't need exposure of Brandon Tatum to understand who he is. This Nolan Wells situation just further shows who he is, but we already knew who he was. Way before this, we've been got it with him. And what's bad about it is when we have a situation like this, where we have a Brandon Tatum, we have these conservatives going after Nolan Wells, people that are investigating it, people that are interested, people just having conversations about trying to figure out what happened to this young man. We have these sides. And don't get me wrong, I don't really want to be on the side of some of these people. I tend to believe, for instance, I believe that D.L. Hughley is full of shit. Just like I believe Brandon Tatum, Scratum, is full of shit. But at the end of the day, one is less full of shit than the other right now. And right now, Brandon is the one who's completely full of it. He interviewed these kids, these young men. I keep calling them kids, but we all know they're young men. They're over 18. And because the young man said, hey, here goes my situation, and I had nothing to do with it, and we all loved Nolan, and then he gave this unconvincing testimony to Brandon Tatum as if that was going to exonerate him, and it doesn't. All it did was open up the door for more questions. And now he will most definitely should be interviewed again, because a lot of what he said sounded inconsistent. I can say this. I won't let go of the Nolan Wells case, this investigation. I will not cease my coverage because I want to know what happened to the young man. Just like any other person, I have a vested interest at this point to finding out what occurred. And I'm not going to take the state, Mississippi's version of events that he just drowned without evidence. Now, if they present us with evidence that is believable, and I want to underscore this, the evidence has to be believable because they could just cook the books on any of this. So we got to be able to look at the evidence that they present and say, okay, do I believe this, or do I think this is credible evidence, or do I think maybe Mississippi just doesn't want the good old boys to go to jail? And I tell you this, I don't know what happened to Nolan Wells. That's what we're trying to find out. But, if this was, I still believe if the situations were reversed, and Nolan Wells was a white kid, and all his friends were black that he was hanging out with, and he comes up missing, you know what? Not only would white people be trying to find out what happened, so would black Americans. This narrative that black Americans are so disliking of white Americans that we would not care if somebody white was, deceased and didn't make it home from a trip with a group of black friends. And yes, I know there were more than one. He was not the only black kid on that boat. There were 3 boats. I get it. But what we are seeing is continual footage, or what we've seen in pictures. It looks like he was pretty much outnumbered when it comes to race, which raises suspicions because this is America, and this is Mississippi, America. And all of these things are reasonable for people to have suspicions. In fact, if you're a black American or a white American, American with any common sense of U.S. history, when you hear Mississippi, and you hear black and white, and you hear deceased, you should automatically start questioning what were the situation, what were the circumstances, because you're a legit person who knows the history of the United States. You know about Medgar Evers. You know about the Freedom Riders. You know about Emmett Till. You know about the building blocks of Mississippi. You know about the bodies that were discovered in a grave, an unmarked grave. So you know about these things about Mississippi. You know about the 2 young men who were tortured by Mississippi police officers for no other reason than being in a house owned by a white woman. And this happened in 2023. Yeah, so all I'm saying is, we are not race baiting to bring up the Nolan Wells situation. We're not race baiting to keep this in the headlines. It is not a negative for us to talk about this. It is the most natural thing to be discussing, to be trying to figure out what happened, to try to get more information. And we're waiting on the autopsy. We're waiting on the forensic. We're waiting on the toxicology report. None of these things have come in yet. And my understanding is when they do come in, it's going to the grand jury. I don't even know if they're going to release it publicly. So what are we supposed to do? I take you back to Charlie Kirk. I take you back to that story because that shows the psyche of America, middle America. When I say middle America, I'm talking about white America. They show us time and time again how they protect their own. They show us who they value, what they value, and it's not us. And we can accept that as reality. So if you're a black person, you're looking at this story and you're feeling a tinge of, what about all the other black young men and women who die every day? That's a good way to feel. I feel that way too. I feel like, are we doing justice to all our brothers and sisters who die under mysterious circumstances? All I can tell you, it's not your fault, it's not our fault. Until an issue becomes public knowledge, you can't be concerned about an issue you didn't know existed. So they have to hit the radar. The stories have to hit the radar for us to respond to them, to make them an issue. It's not that we're picking and choosing who we support. But if a tree falls in the forest, there's nobody there to tell you how you know it fell. And that's what happens. So to wrap this all up, fam, there is nothing, and I'm telling you, there's nothing about the Nolan Wells story that has been answered at this point that anybody should be comfortable with. When a story hits the radar and it gets amplified to this extent, it is natural to want to know what happened. It is unnatural to make statements that you already know what happened, that there is nothing to see here. That is your bigotry showing. That is your bias showing. In my summation, the way I see it, it could have been anybody. It could have been anything. My door is open. My mind is open to the possibility. But don't tell me I don't have a reason to be concerned. Don't tell me that I'm race baiting by trying to find the ending or the meaning or the cause. I'm doing what I wish would have been done for my daughter. Finding out how it happened, why it happened, and who was responsible. And I think any parent, any neighbor, any friend, any citizen should want justice for fellow citizens. And until we get to the point where that is commonplace, where that is not considered race baiting or race hating, until we get to that place in Morabi, we are lost. My name is Tim Black. I want to thank y'all for tuning into this. Continue to ask your questions about Nolan Wells. Continue to be nosy. Continue the conversations. And we will continue to look at other stories, other incidents like this, and we want to amplify them and keep the pressure on the politicians and the pressure on the government officials. Why? Because that's our job, our duty as concerned citizens. That's what we do. Be proud of that.